In a world consumed by constant noise, perpetual distraction, and endless external stimuli, there exists a profound phenomenon occurring beneath the surface of our collective awareness. Spiritually awakened souls are quietly retreating from the cacophony of modern existence. This is not a random occurrence, but a conscious response to an inner calling that transcends conventional understanding. The journey of spiritual awakening begins with a simple yet profound realization that there is more to existence than what meets the eye. As consciousness expands beyond the limitations of material perception, individuals begin to sense the subtle realms that have always existed alongside our physical reality. These awakened beings recognize that the true nature of existence extends far beyond the narrow confines of materialistic pursuits and societal expectations. Edgar once spoke of these souls as light workers, individuals who carry a higher frequency and serve as conduits for spiritual wisdom in times of great transformation. His insights remind us that throughout human history, there have always been those who hear a different calling, a summons to retreat from the external world and journey inward to discover the boundless dimensions of consciousness. The call to silence is not merely an escape from noise, it represents a deliberate choice to align with higher frequencies of awareness. When an individual awakens spiritually, they become increasingly sensitive to energetic fields. The dense vibrations predominant in crowded spaces, media channels, and digital environments create dissonance with their refined energy systems. This discomfort is not imaginary. It manifests as physical symptoms, emotional distress, and mental exhaustion. Awakened souls understand that silence is not empty but full. In the absence of external stimulation, they discover the rich tapestry of subtle energies, divine guidance, and cosmic intelligence that has always been present, yet masked by the clamor of everyday life. This realization transforms their relationship with solitude. What appears as isolation to the unawakened is experienced as profound connection to universal consciousness. The retreat from societal engagement often begins subtly. An awakened individual might gradually reduce their social media presence, decline invitations to events that feel energetically depleting, or relocate to natural settings away from urban centers. They begin to prioritize practices that nurture their expanded awareness: meditation, contemplation in nature, energy work, and communion with higher realms of consciousness. This withdrawal is frequently misunderstood by those who remain embedded in conventional paradigms. Family members worry about depression or antisocial behavior. Friends feel abandoned or rejected. Colleagues may interpret the shift as a lack of ambition or responsibility. Yet these perspectives stem from a fundamental misunderstanding of the spiritual journey and its necessities. What appears as disconnection on the physical plane represents a profound reconnection with the spiritual dimension. Awakened souls recognize that they must temporarily step back from certain environments and relationships to integrate their expanding consciousness and establish stronger connections with higher guidance. This is not an act of selfishness, but rather a response to spiritual responsibility. They understand that they cannot effectively serve their highest purpose while entrapped in systems and relationships that suppress their authentic nature. The electromagnetic field of an awakened individual interacts differently with collective energy patterns. As their vibrational frequency rises, they naturally become incompatible with lower frequency environments. This creates a form of energetic friction that can only be resolved through separation or transformation. When the collective field resists transformation, the awakened soul must often create distance to preserve their hard-won spiritual attunement. Throughout spiritual traditions, there exists the concept of the dark night of the soul, a period of seeming isolation and disconnection that precedes deeper spiritual integration. This phase often coincides with the call to silence and retreat. The awakened individual feels drawn away from familiar social patterns not because they fear engagement, but because they require sacred space to navigate this critical spiritual transition. Time spent in contemplative solitude allows for the dissolution of ego structures that no longer serve the soul's evolution. It permits the integration of higher wisdom and the recalibration of one's entire being to more refined frequencies. This process cannot be rushed or bypassed. It demands the spaciousness that only deliberate retreat can provide. Many spiritual teachings across traditions speak of this necessary withdrawal. Buddhist practitioners enter retreats to deepen their meditation. Christian mystics have historically sought the silence of monasteries. Indigenous wisdom keepers undertake vision quests in isolation. The Taoist sages retreated to mountains. These practices acknowledge what modern spiritually awakened souls are rediscovering, that certain levels of spiritual consciousness can only be accessed and stabilized through intentional separation from the collective field. The quiet vanishing of awakened souls represents not an abandonment of humanity, but a sacred preparation. They withdraw not in rejection of the world, but in service to it, gathering spiritual strength, accessing higher wisdom, and preparing to return with greater capacity to assist in collective transformation. They understand that their temporary absence creates space for a more meaningful presence in the future. This cycle of retreat and return mirrors natural processes. The seed must be buried in darkness before it can sprout into light. The butterfly requires the isolation of the chrysalis before emerging transformed. The awakened soul similarly needs periods of withdrawal to complete important stages of metamorphosis. As we witness more spiritually conscious individuals choosing silence and solitude, we are observing not a trend, but a response to planetary evolutionary pressures. The Earth and humanity are undergoing a profound vibrational shift. Those who awaken early to this transformation serve as way showers, and their retreat represents an essential phase in the unfolding of a new human potential. The awakened soul inevitably experiences a profound dissonance with conventional society, a clash that extends far beyond mere philosophical disagreement. This conflict emerges from fundamentally different ways of perceiving reality and engaging with existence. While the unawakened remain embedded in material-focused paradigms, spiritually conscious individuals have glimpsed the limitations of these structures and can no longer fully participate in them without compromising their expanded awareness. Modern society operates primarily on principles of competition, acquisition, and hierarchical power. These systems were designed to organize human activity around material concerns, but they simultaneously suppress the deeper dimensions of consciousness. When an individual awakens spiritually, they begin to recognize how these structures actively inhibit collective spiritual evolution and human potential. This recognition creates an unavoidable tension between their inner knowing and outer participation. The materialistic foundation of contemporary civilization stands in direct opposition to spiritual awareness. Consumerism promotes the belief that fulfillment comes through external acquisition rather than internal realization. Economic systems measure success through material accumulation rather than spiritual development. Entertainment industries capitalize on lower frequency emotions like fear, desire, and competition rather than fostering compassion, unity, and transcendence. Awakened souls perceive these contradictions with increasing clarity. They see how educational institutions primarily prepare individuals to function as economic units rather than nurturing their multidimensional potential. They witness healthcare systems that address symptoms while ignoring the energetic and spiritual dimensions of well-being. They observe political structures that perpetuate division rather than recognizing our fundamental interconnectedness. This awareness creates a crisis of participation. The spiritually conscious individual finds themselves unable to engage with conventional systems without experiencing energetic distress. Corporate environments dense with competition, manipulation, and ego-driven behavior become intolerable. Social gatherings centered around superficial conversation and status displays feel energetically depleting. Media consumption becomes increasingly uncomfortable as they sense the fear-based programming beneath the surface content. The clash intensifies as awakened individuals attempt to communicate their expanded perspective. Language itself, constructed within limited paradigms, proves inadequate to convey spiritual insights. When they try to express their understanding, they often encounter dismissal, ridicule, or concern about their mental health. The dominant culture has few frameworks to accommodate perspectives that challenge its foundational assumptions, leaving the awakened feeling increasingly isolated in their understanding. Relationships undergo profound transformation during this phase. Partnerships formed before spiritual awakening may struggle to accommodate the evolved consciousness of the awakened individual. Family dynamics become strained as the awakened person can no longer participate in dysfunctional patterns they previously accepted unconsciously. Friendships based on shared activities rather than authentic connection begin to dissolve as the awakened soul seeks greater depth and meaning in relationships. The workplace often becomes a particular source of conflict. Professional environments frequently demand conformity to values and behaviors that contradict spiritual principles. The awakened individual may find themselves expected to participate in competitive practices, manipulative marketing, environmentally destructive operations, or hierarchical power dynamics that violate their deepened ethical awareness. This creates an untenable situation where continued participation requires suppressing their authentic understanding. Even spiritual or religious communities can become sources of dissonance. Traditional religions may offer dogmatic interpretations that clash with direct spiritual experience. New Age communities sometimes promote spiritual materialism or bypass authentic transformation through superficial practices. Finding genuine spiritual fellowship becomes increasingly challenging as the awakened soul discovers that many spiritual paths have been co-opted by ego structures and commercialization. The digital realm presents its own unique challenges. Social media platforms amplify division, comparison, and surface-level engagement while simultaneously suppressing deeper truths through algorithmic bias and censorship. Online spaces often reinforce collective thought patterns rather than supporting expanded consciousness. For the awakened soul, digital environments frequently feel energetically intrusive and misaligned with their natural state of presence. This growing incompatibility creates a genuine dilemma. The awakened individual recognizes their interconnection with all humanity and feels called to serve collective evolution, yet the very structures through which they might offer this service actively resist the consciousness they embody. They find themselves caught between their responsibility to their own spiritual integrity and their desire to remain engaged with a world that needs transformation. Many attempt various compromises before ultimately withdrawing. They may try to maintain conventional employment while preserving their spiritual practice. They might limit social engagements to manage their energy while still maintaining connections. Some experiment with creating alternative communities or organizations based on higher principles. These efforts, while noble, often reveal how deeply entrenched lower frequency patterns are within collective structures. The media landscape and information environment present particular challenges. Mass media predominantly operates at frequency levels that promote fear, separation, and limitation, the antithesis of spiritual consciousness. Awakened individuals become increasingly sensitive to the energetic manipulation embedded in mainstream narratives and find themselves unable to consume this content without experiencing distress. Yet disengaging from these information streams often leads to social disconnection, as common reality is increasingly defined by shared media consumption. Financial systems create another significant point of conflict. The awakened soul recognizes that current economic structures are based on artificial scarcity, exploitation, and the commodification of life itself. Yet extracting oneself from these systems completely remains nearly impossible within modern society. This creates an ongoing tension between practical necessity and spiritual integrity that many awakened souls struggle to reconcile. Perhaps most fundamentally, the awakened individual experiences a shift in their relationship with time. Conventional society operates according to linear time and demands productivity, efficiency, and constant activity. Spiritual consciousness reveals a different dimension of time, cyclical, organic, and flowing according to natural rhythms rather than artificial schedules. This divergent experience of time creates practical challenges in meeting societal expectations while honoring authentic spiritual timing. The clash with society ultimately reveals a profound truth. Current collective structures were not designed to accommodate or support higher states of consciousness. These systems were established to organize human activity within a limited understanding of reality, and they actively resist expansion beyond those limitations. The discomfort experienced by awakened souls is not a sign of their failure to adapt, but rather an indication that these structures must eventually transform to accommodate humanity's spiritual evolution. This recognition ultimately leads many awakened individuals to the difficult but necessary decision to step back from full participation in conventional society. This withdrawal represents not a rejection of humanity, but a recognition that they must temporarily create distance from limiting structures to preserve and develop the expanded consciousness that will ultimately help transform those very systems. What appears as disappearance is, in truth, a carefully orchestrated spiritual realignment. The withdrawal of awakened souls from conventional social structures is not an escape, but a strategic repositioning, a conscious choice to create the conditions necessary for deeper spiritual development and more effective future service. This retreat represents a sophisticated spiritual response to evolutionary pressures that are accelerating the transformation of human consciousness. When properly understood, this withdrawal reveals itself as part of an ancient pattern recognized in spiritual traditions across cultures and throughout time. In Taoist philosophy, this principle appears as wei wu wei, action through non-action, where retreat becomes a powerful form of engagement. Buddhist teachings speak of the bodhisattva who temporarily withdraws to perfect their realization before returning to guide others. Christian mysticism describes the desert experience where prophets and mystics retreated from society to receive divine wisdom before returning with renewed purpose. The strategic nature of this withdrawal becomes apparent when we examine its timing and purpose. Awakened individuals do not simply flee at the first experience of discomfort or disagreement with society. Rather, they withdraw at precise spiritual junctures when their continued immersion in lower vibrational environments would compromise their awakening process. They recognize when they have gathered sufficient understanding from conventional existence and must now integrate this knowledge in protected energetic space. This retreat serves several essential spiritual functions. First, it creates the necessary conditions for stabilizing higher states of consciousness. The awakened individual has accessed expanded awareness, but this realization remains vulnerable to the dense energetic fields that dominate collective spaces. Just as a seedling requires protection from harsh elements before it can establish strong roots, the newly awakened consciousness needs energetic shelter to firmly establish itself within the individual's being. Secondly, withdrawal allows for the complete reorganization of the individual's energy system. Spiritual awakening initiates profound changes in the subtle anatomy, activating dormant energy centers, clearing blocked pathways, and refining the entire vibrational field. This recalibration requires periods of reduced external stimulation and careful energetic management. The awakened soul intuitively recognizes that certain environments and relationships actively interfere with this delicate process. The third function involves the dissolution of conditioned patterns that no longer serve their evolving consciousness. Modern humans accumulate layers of social programming, limiting beliefs, and artificial constructs that become embedded in their psychological and energetic structures. These patterns cannot be fully recognized or released while still immersed in the environments that reinforced them. Strategic withdrawal creates the perspective and energetic space necessary to identify and transform these deeply rooted limitations. Perhaps most importantly, this retreat provides access to higher guidance and spiritual resources that remain inaccessible amidst collective noise. In quietude and solitude, awakened souls can attune to subtle frequencies where ancestral wisdom, spiritual guides, and cosmic intelligence communicate. These connections provide critical direction for their spiritual journey and future service. Many report receiving specific instructions during these periods of withdrawal, insights about their unique purpose, methods for developing particular spiritual gifts, or understanding about their role in collective transformation. This withdrawal often unfolds in stages, rather than as a single dramatic exit from society. Initially, the awakened individual might simply reduce exposure to particularly dense energetic environments, limiting time spent in crowded urban spaces, decreasing media consumption, or setting stronger boundaries in energy-depleting relationships. As their sensitivity increases, they may feel called to relocate to natural settings, join spiritual communities, or establish more comprehensive separation from mainstream structures. Throughout this process, many maintain certain connections that support their spiritual development while releasing those that hinder it. They often seek fellowship with others experiencing similar awakening, creating micro-communities that provide mutual understanding and energetic resonance. These spiritual fellowships serve as incubators where awakened consciousness can be normalized and strengthened through shared recognition. The strategic withdrawal frequently includes specific spiritual practices that accelerate transformation. Extended meditation retreats, sacred plant ceremonies, vision quests, energy healing modalities, and other transformative practices feature prominently during this phase. These approaches help clear remaining blockages, integrate spiritual insights, and prepare the individual's entire being to hold higher frequencies consistently. A critical aspect of this withdrawal involves the recalibration of the individual's relationship with the material world. Rather than rejecting materiality entirely, awakened souls seek to establish a more balanced engagement, recognizing the sacred nature of physical existence, while releasing attachment to material accumulation and security. Many simplify their lives dramatically, releasing possessions, reducing financial commitments, and creating lifestyles that require minimal participation in conventional economic systems. For some, this period includes what spiritual traditions call the shamanic death, a profound dissolution of previous identity structures that creates space for rebirth at higher levels of consciousness. During this intense phase, the individual may experience significant isolation as they navigate this deep transformational process that cannot be fully understood by those who haven't experienced it. This passage requires particular protection from external energies and perspectives that might interfere with its natural unfolding. The strategic nature of withdrawal becomes particularly evident in how awakened individuals manage their energy and attention during this period. Rather than randomly disconnecting, they become increasingly discerning about where they invest their life force. They recognize that attention is a form of spiritual currency and become intentional about directing this resource toward their highest evolution, rather than dispersing it through fragmented social engagement. This withdrawal also includes a deliberate reclamation of natural cycles and rhythms. Awakened souls often find themselves naturally aligning with solar, lunar, and seasonal patterns, allowing these cycles to guide their activities and spiritual practices. This realignment with cosmic timing creates further disconnection from artificial schedules and expectations that dominate conventional society, but supports deeper harmony with universal energy flows. Throughout this process, many awakened individuals maintain what might be called a spiritual presence in the world, even while physically withdrawing. They continue to affect the collective field through their elevated consciousness, sending healing intentions, holding space for transformation, and contributing to the subtle architecture of emerging possibilities. Their influence shifts from visible action to energetic transmission, less apparent to ordinary perception, but potentially more powerful in its effects. The ultimate purpose of this strategic withdrawal becomes clear as the awakened soul completes necessary inner transformations. It prepares them for more effective service aligned with their authentic spiritual purpose. Many describe receiving clear guidance about when and how to re-engage with society, often in entirely new ways that bypass previous limitations and directly address root causes rather than symptoms of collective dysfunction. Rather than returning to conventional participation, these individuals frequently emerge as way showers, system builders, and pattern disruptors who introduce new possibilities into the collective field. They establish alternative healing modalities, create regenerative communities, develop innovative educational approaches, introduce more conscious business models, or serve as bridges between dimensional realities. Their withdrawal has prepared them to embody new paradigms rather than simply criticizing existing ones. This pattern reveals the profound wisdom behind what appears as disappearance. The awakened soul withdraws not to abandon their responsibility to humanity, but to fulfill it more completely, retreating temporarily from limited expressions of service to prepare for more expanded contributions aligned with humanity's highest potential. Their disappearance creates space for a more authentic and powerful reappearance, when both they and the collective field are ready for the next phase of conscious evolution. Throughout the ages, spiritual traditions have spoken of cyclical patterns in human consciousness, great wheels of time that move humanity through alternating periods of spiritual illumination and darkness. These ancient wisdom systems, from the Vedic yugas to the Mayan calendar cycles, the Hopi prophecies to the biblical ages, have consistently foretold times when spiritually awakened individuals would temporarily withdraw from society to preserve sacred knowledge during periods of collective shadow. What we are witnessing now with the quiet vanishing of awakened souls is not unprecedented, but was prophesied millennia ago. These predictions describe our current era as a critical juncture, the end of one great cycle and the beginning of another, characterized by intense purification, the dissolution of outdated structures, and the temporary retreat of light-bearers before a significant evolutionary leap in human consciousness. The Hopi elders spoke of this time as the emergence from the fourth to the fifth world, predicting that those who maintained spiritual awareness would need to gather in protected spaces to preserve their knowledge during the Great Purification. Their prophecies described how these individuals would appear to disappear from mainstream society, creating sacred refuges where they would hold space for humanity's transition through chaos toward renewal. Similarly, ancient Hindu texts describe the transitional period between the Kali Yuga, Age of Darkness, and Satya Yuga, Age of Truth, as a time when spiritually evolved souls would retreat to mountains, forests, and sacred communities to maintain higher frequencies, while destructive forces completed their necessary cycle. These texts explain that this withdrawal serves a cosmic purpose, creating energetic anchors that prevent humanity from descending completely into unconsciousness, while simultaneously establishing the vibrational foundation for the emerging age. The Essenes, an ancient mystical Jewish community, preserved prophecies describing how children of light would temporarily withdraw from the children of darkness during civilization's most challenging transition. Their scrolls explain that this separation is not abandonment, but a sacred trust, lightworkers retreating to maintain the purity of their consciousness, while collective shadows are revealed and released. They describe this as a compassionate act that preserves the spiritual technologies and consciousness necessary for humanity's rebirth. Edgar spoke of this phenomenon with remarkable clarity, describing how old souls and lightworkers would find it necessary to withdraw from mainstream society during the transitional decades of the early 21st century. He explained that these individuals serve as consciousness anchors during planetary initiation, and their retreat represents a strategic repositioning rather than an abdication of responsibility. Their temporary disappearance, he suggested, creates energetic space for necessary karmic completion, while simultaneously establishing frequency corridors for new consciousness to enter. Indigenous prophecies across cultures have similarly described this time as the turning of ages, when wisdom keepers would need to protect ancient knowledge by creating distance from collapsing systems. The Kuro shamans of Peru speak of the Pachacuti, the great turning over, where those who remembered their spiritual nature would temporarily separate from collective density to become seed-bearers for humanity's next expression. This separation is described not as judgment, but as cosmic timing, a necessary phase in the birth of a new world. These prophecies consistently emphasize several important aspects of this withdrawal that help us understand its deeper purpose within humanity's spiritual evolution. First, they clarify that this retreat occurs according to precise cosmic timing, rather than personal preference. The disappearance of awakened souls in our time aligns with astronomical cycles, energetic portals, and divine timetables that transcend individual choice. Those who withdraw do so in response to cosmic directives that align with humanity's evolutionary blueprint. Second, these prophecies explain that the retreat of light-bearers creates necessary energetic contrast that accelerates awakening for those ready to evolve. By withdrawing their stabilizing presence, awakened souls allow collective shadow patterns to become more visible and therefore more available for conscious transformation. This temporary intensification of darkness serves as a powerful catalyst for those on the threshold of awakening, creating the pressure required for breakthrough. The prophecies also reveal how this withdrawal corresponds with the collapse of artificial systems that have suppressed human spiritual potential. As awakened souls retreat from conventional structures, their withdrawal of energy and participation accelerates the dissolution of systems that cannot exist without unconscious support. This simultaneous process of withdrawal and collapse creates space for more authentic expressions of human organization to emerge from the remnants of previous forms. Perhaps most importantly, these ancient predictions describe the retreat of awakened souls as part of a coordinated spiritual response to planetary initiation. They explain that certain levels of consciousness must be temporarily sheltered from intensifying chaotic energies to preserve the spiritual technologies and frequencies that will be essential for rebuilding after the completion of destructive cycles. This preservation ensures continuity of wisdom across great epochs of human experience. The prophecies particularly emphasize the role of what various traditions call rainbow warriors, eagles and condors, light tribes, or starseeds, souls who incarnated specifically to serve during this transitional period. These beings are described as having a dual mission: first to withdraw from collapsing structures to maintain their frequency, and then to return as way showers once collective purification has reached a certain threshold. Their disappearance is portrayed as a fundamental aspect of their soul agreement with humanity and Earth. These ancient predictions also reveal another dimension of this phenomenon, describing how awakened souls create interconnected energy grids while physically separated. Though they may withdraw from direct social engagement, these individuals establish subtle energy networks that span the globe, creating what some traditions call the planetary light grid, or noosphere. This invisible architecture provides energetic support for humanity throughout the transformation process, even while its creators remain largely unseen. The prophecies speak of how these withdrawn lightworkers continue to perform essential spiritual service through dream work, interdimensional communication, energy transmissions, and consciousness bridges that operate beyond physical visibility. Their disappearance from ordinary social participation allows them to engage more fully with these subtle aspects of planetary healing that remain inaccessible to conventional awareness, but profoundly impact collective evolution. Many traditions describe this period as the quickening, when time itself appears to accelerate as humanity approaches a consciousness threshold. During this phase, the prophecies explain that awakened souls must withdraw from artificial time constructs to align with the true cosmic timing that governs evolutionary leaps. This realignment allows them to serve as timekeepers who help modulate the intense energies flowing through Earth's transitional portal. Indigenous prophecies particularly emphasize how this withdrawal relates to humanity's relationship with Earth herself. They describe awakened souls retreating to natural settings to strengthen their connection with planetary consciousness during a critical phase when Earth is also undergoing vibrational recalibration. This communion with nature establishes communication channels through which Earth can transmit healing codes and evolutionary instructions to receptive humans who will later share these teachings more widely. The ancient texts consistently portray this current period as the fulfillment of long-standing predictions, the time when many shall be called but few shall choose to hear, when those who recognize cosmic signals will need to temporarily separate themselves from collective density to preserve sacred flame. This separation is described not as permanent, but as a necessary phase in a greater cycle of separation and return that serves humanity's ultimate unification at higher levels of consciousness. As we witness the quiet vanishing of awakened souls in our time, we're observing the unfolding of prophecies that have guided spiritual traditions for millennia. This disappearance represents not an unexpected anomaly, but the precise fulfillment of ancient wisdom that prepared humanity for this transitional era. The withdrawal we observe follows cosmic timing that transcends individual choice, a divinely orchestrated repositioning of consciousness that serves humanity's passage through its most significant evolutionary threshold. Those who have withdrawn carry forward an unbroken lineage of light that has been preserved through countless civilizations and epochs. Their retreat ensures that the highest wisdom humanity has attained remains intact as we navigate collective initiation. Their temporary disappearance creates space for the completion of one great cycle and the emergence of another, a sacred pause between cosmic breaths that allows for the integration of completed lessons and the reception of new evolutionary codes. Far from abandoning humanity, these souls fulfill their deepest commitment by temporarily withdrawing from visible participation. They maintain vigilant spiritual presence while physical systems undergo necessary transformation. Their disappearance represents the highest expression of service, preserving the sacred flame of awakened consciousness that will illuminate humanity's path once the necessary purification has been completed, and the collective field is ready to receive the light they have protected through the darkness. If these words have resonated with your inner knowing, you are likely among those who recognize these truths within your own journey. You are not alone in your experiences of disconnection from conventional systems or your call toward deeper spiritual alignment. Subscribe now to continue this exploration of spiritual awakening and receive guidance for navigating these transformational times. Each chapter offers insights to help you understand your unique path and purpose within humanity's greater evolution. Share your experiences in the comments below. How have you felt the call to withdraw from certain aspects of society? What spiritual insights have emerged during your periods of sacred solitude? Your voice matters in this conversation, and your testimony may illuminate the path for others who are just beginning to awaken. Remember, your strategic withdrawal is not isolation, but preparation. Together, we form an invisible network of light that sustains humanity through its greatest transformation. Subscribe, comment, and join our community of conscious way showers.